To lots of people, spring is the season when snow melts, flowers blossom, birds build nests, and baby animals play outside their den. Farmers think of spring as the time to plow their fields and plant seeds. For students, spring might be the season to play soccer and baseball and fly kites. Spring is a season full of growth and activity. After the cold and ice of winter, we always look forward to spring's warm, sunny days. But when does winter really end and spring start? Like most seasons, spring seems to run on two different clocks. One clock is based on weather, the other on the Earth's orbit around the sun. Let's look at the weather clock first. As you may already know, this clock is not very reliable, especially early in the season. One day it's warm, the next day cold. Even plants get fooled by spring's weather. Flowers may start to bloom and then get covered with snow. Early in the season, winter and spring fight a tug of war. The many changes in spring's weather often bring rain. That's why we get April showers that bring May flowers. We also get wind. Wind blows when masses of warm and cold air replace each other. Once in a while, sudden weather changes lead to a special kind of wind that swirls in the shape of a funnel, a tornado. Dangerous tornadoes can form when very warm air suddenly meets very cold air. Spring is the busiest season for tornadoes, as warm and cold air often bump into each other. Fortunately, even tornadoes, cold snaps, and unexpected snowfalls cannot keep spring away. To see why, we can turn to the second clock for spring, the orbit clock. This second clock is the official one because it is based on the Earth's position to the sun. This provides a true, reliable start and end to spring and all our seasons. Spring officially begins around March 21st, when an interesting relationship occurs between the Earth and Sun. The Earth spins on its axis, completing a rotation once every 24 hours. This gives us day and night. As you can see here, the axis is tilted. It's not straight up and down as we might expect it to be, but instead leans 23.5 degrees. This angle is measured from the path the Earth takes on its orbit around the sun. Watch what the tilt causes the North Pole to do as the Earth journeys around the sun. Over here, the North Pole leans away from the sun. The Northern Hemisphere, or half of the world, is in winter now, as the sun is low in the sky at midday. On the other side of the sun, the North Pole leans toward the sun. Now in the Northern Hemisphere, the sun is higher in the sky, Daylight lasts longer, and summer is in progress. If we back up to the first day of spring, the North Pole leans neither towards nor away from the sun. From the side, the pole looks straight up and down. In a way, for a brief period, the axis is at a right angle to the path of the orbit. When the axis is like this, the North Pole has 12 hours of daylight and 12 hours of darkness. So does the South Pole and the equator and the entire Earth. We sometimes call this first day of spring the vernal equinox. Vernal means spring, and equinox means equal day and night. Over most of the Earth, the length of day and night are equal on only one other day of the year, the first day of autumn. For the rest of spring, as the Earth journeys around the sun, the pole tilts towards the sun more and more. This constantly increases the length of daylight. We might think of spring as the growing season for the sun. By the end of spring, days can be very long. How much longer days become depends on how far you live from the equator. Suppose you live at this spot on Earth. Compare the hours of daylight you have at the start of spring to the hours of daylight at the end of the season. At the beginning, you have 12 hours of daylight, but by the end of the season, 14 hours. If you lived farther north, the difference would be even greater. And by the last day of spring, you may have to go to bed before sundown, because you would have daylight 16 hours a day, 4 more hours than on the first day of spring. If you lived above the Arctic Circle, you may have real trouble sleeping at the end of spring, because the sun would not set at all. You would have 24 hours of daylight. If the North Pole leans towards the sun after the spring equinox, what happens at the South Pole? It leans away from the sun. South of the equator, the seasons reverse. Spring in the northern hemisphere is autumn in the southern hemisphere. While our daylight hours grow longer, south of the equator, they grow shorter. The same reversal is true for summer and winter. Whether your spring starts in March or September, you may find spring's increasing hours of daylight seem to give you more energy. Sunlight is nature's basic source of energy. With more sunlight, nature has more energy. Many plants and animals are sensitive to what scientists call the photoperiod. Photoperiod is a biologist's way of saying length of daylight. Unlike weather, which, as we have seen, is not very dependable, the length of daylight provides a sure way for plants and animals to keep their biological clock in tune to the seasons. By using photoperiod, waiting for the right amount of daylight, birds know when to start migrating and singing. Photoperiod also helps squirrels, rabbits, foxes, and most other animals to start having their families at the best time of year. The length of daylight causes physical and chemical changes in their bodies that gets them ready for families. Spring is a good time for baby animals because the weather is comfortable, there is lots to eat, and the young will have lots of time to grow and learn before facing the challenges of winter. For plants, too, spring is the time to begin growing again. Plants, of course, need sun and warmth to grow. In spring's earliest days, some plants have a little extra help to start growing. They use nutrients stored last summer. For example, trees use sap to start making leaves. All winter, their sap is stored in roots. In spring, the sap rises up the trunk and into the branches. With the supply of nutrients and energy stored in the sap, the bare tree can make almost a full set of fresh, bright green leaves in just a week or so. Once the leaves have sprouted, they can start making more food for the tree, and the tree can begin its season of growth under the warm sun. Many early flowers sprout from a bulb, which is a big, fat, round root. Like a battery, the bulb is full of stored energy that starts the plant flowering. Other plants grow from seeds. Inside each seed is a little plant with a packet of energy to grow on. The seed produces a root so the plant can get the things it needs from the soil, and a green leaf. With the green leaf, the plant can get energy from the sun to start growing on its own. As spring passes, the Earth continues its long journey around the sun. And each day, the North Pole leans towards the sun a little more, bathing life below with warmth, energy, and light. Finally, around June 21st, the pole tilts towards the sun the most it possibly can. On no other day of the year will the sun rise so early and set so late, and daylight last so long. This is a special day called the summer solstice. The summer solstice marks the end of another spring and the start of summer. In the coming months ahead, the weather will get hotter, but nature will be as busy as ever, while the young plants and animals of spring continue to grow. Let's take a few minutes to review some of the things you learned in this video. In the following quiz, fill in the blanks with the correct word or words when you hear this tone. Good luck, and let's begin. 1. Spring seems to run on 2 clocks. One is based on weather, the other on the Earth's around the sun. 2. Blows when warm and cold air replace each other. 3. Spring officially begins around 4. The Earth spins on its axis, completing a every 24 hours. Five. We sometimes call the first day of spring the vernal, 6. Through spring, days get and nights 7. When it is spring north of the equator, south of the equator, it is 8. Is a biologist's way of saying length of daylight. Nine. A liquid full of food and energy helps trees make leaves in spring. 10. Spring ends on a day we call the summer